Welcome and study with Tanzania Institute of Education.
Hello students, I hope you are fine. My name is Ngala Abdallah Mtegetwa. I'm geography teacher. I'm going to be with you to study the topic of water masses. As you are knowledgeable enough with this topic, it has a number of subtopics, including that of ocean and the seas. Therefore, we are going to study that particular subtopic by taking into consideration of the guiding questions we have here. Okay, so the first question, my dear student, reads, ocean currents are the products of an interplay of multiple factors. Explain. My dear students, the question needs you to give multiple factors for the occurrence of ocean currents. But before you give the multiple factors, you should start with a good introduction. In it, give the meaning of ocean currents and the types. So here, we have the following. Ocean currents are the horizontal movements of water masses in the ocean over a greater distance of many kilometers in a fairly defined direction. They are of two types, including warm and cold currents. Examples of warm currents include North Equatorial Current, North Atlantic Drift, North Pacific Current, Kuroshio, Mozambique, South Equatorial Current, and the Brazilian. While those of cold currents include Peruvian, California, West Wind Drift, Benguela, Canaries, South Pacific Current, South Atlantic Current, South Equatorial, and the Oceanic. Class, geographically it is well known, oceans occupy 75% of the total Earth's surface. It means ocean widely make the surface of the Earth. The surface of the Earth is subjected to global wind systems. Such global wind systems generate powerful forces which set water masses to move over greater distance. So movement of such water masses are what we used to say ocean currents. These are numerous enough, but they are not all the same. Some are of warm water, while the others are of cold water, so they are categorized into warm and cold ocean currents. But the question needs us to give the multiple interplay factors for the occurrence. It means here, occurrence and the nature of ocean currents made by combined factors. So the combined factors for the nature and the occurrence of currents are what we used to say interplay multiple factors. These are about 5, and they include the following. 1, the world wind belts. The blow of the global wind systems over oceans set up the surface water in motion and thus produce currents. Moreover, the directions taken by the currents fundamentally determined by the directions of wind blow. My dear students, by regarding elaboration of the points, we are directed to understand wealthy windy systems make two things pertaining to ocean currents. One, set water to move. Two, global windy systems have considerable directions. Thus, the directions of such windy systems determine the directions of ocean currents. So, global windy systems have two roles. They make occurrence of water masses movement. Two, they determine the direction of such water masses movements. Secondly, we have the point of temperature of the ocean water. Here we have this elaboration. It determines the nature and the depth of the currents as follows. In regions of low temperature, especially of polar, cold currents develop and of which move towards the equator at great depths in the oceans. In regions of high temperature, especially of tropical, warm currents develop and of which move towards polar at shallow depths. My dear students, by regarding that elaboration, we are directed to understand temperature offers two roles pertaining to ocean currents. They use to determine nature of current. They use to determine the depth of flow. Temperature can be high. Temperature can be low. Now, where temperature high, as experienced in the tropical regions, water warmed enough, surface water made to have a high degree of heat. By being of high degree of heat, they are developed to have movements of warm water, and thus we used to say warm currents. Class moreover understanding, as the water heated, used to expand by being lighter, and thus likely to flow to elsewhere at shallow depths. It is unlike to where temperature low as experienced in areas of polar. Low temperature makes the surface water cooled, thus made to be of low degree of heat. This used to develop cold ocean currents. Water, by being cooled, made denser, and because of being denser, is made to move towards the other areas at greater depths. So temperature influences currents by determining the nature as well as depth of flow. 3, we have the rotation of the Earth. Before we look at the elaboration of the points we have there, let us understand this. We have already seen currents are made to occur by the force of wealthy windy systems. Now, it should bear into our mind that the wealthy has a behavior of rotating anti-clockwise from west to east. Because of this behavior, objects over the Earth's surface deflected. deflected to right in the northern hemisphere, deflected to left in the southern hemisphere. It means winds by being moving objects over the Earth's surface, deflected to right in the northern hemisphere, deflected to left in the southern hemisphere. As the directions of currents determined by wind blow, obviously currents in the northern hemisphere deflected to right, while in the southern hemisphere deflected to left. It means, my dear student, here, Earth's rotation determines direction of currents. In the northern hemisphere, currents deflected to right. In the southern hemisphere, currents deflected to left as the Earth rotates from west to east. So, my dear students, I remind you, the question we have needs us to give multiple interplay factors for the occurrence of ocean currents. So far, we have disclosed 3 points. The first was the world wind system. 2, temperature. 3, Earth's rotation. And now we are in the fourth point of the shape of land masses. The way on how the shape of land masses influences ocean currents, elaborated as follows here. The shape or angle of the coastline affects the direction of water current by redirecting it in a certain path. My dear students, I would like you to understand this. Suppose this is the land mass. Here there is the occurrence of the currents moving northwards. But because of the shape of the land mass, automatically the current is directed to certain paths, as water cannot move across the land. Here we have reflection by numerous ocean currents in the world. 1, the direction occupied by the North Pacific current. As you can look on the world map showing ocean currents, is determined by the shape of northwestern American coastline. Another example, the direction of Canaries current, determined by the shape of northwestern African coastline. Also understand, North Atlantic drift has a fairly straight direction, as on the way there is no interruption by land mass. So we say there the North Atlantic drift and the South Atlantic ocean currents appear to have relatively straight directions, as on the way there is no interruption by the absence of the large land masses. So you can check there. The North Pacific current focus on the western side of North America. Check the direction of the current. The current there has been determined by the shape of North American on its western side. You can make another reflection by taking into consideration of the Peruvian current in South America. The direction there on the western side of South American coast determined by the respective shape of the landmass. My dear students, check the direction of North Atlantic drift. For long, it is fairly straight, as on the way there is no interruption by the absence of land masses. But as it approaches nearly Iceland, we find it divided. So generally, the factors we have seen are the ones which determine the occurrence of ocean occurrence. It means nature and the occurrence of ocean occurrence made by combined number of factors, of which also considered multiple interplay factors. So as we are through with question number 1, let us continue with question number 2. Class, oceanic water has considerable chemical composition in terms of salinity. This chemical composition, this chemical nature is made to occur as salt minerals contained in oceanic bedrocks dissolve. It means oceanic basin has considerable bottom, which is also known as oceanic bed. Also, we used to call it as the oceanic floor. Oceanic bottom, oceanic bed, or oceanic floor is of rocks. Now, in the rocks, minerals contained, including those of salts. Now, salt minerals, owing to their profound nature, easily dissolve into oceanic water. So by this, oceanic water is made saline. So here we have considerable chemical composition. We used to call it as salinity. Now, the specific salt minerals which dissolve in the oceanic water developing salinity include sodium chloride, having percentage composition of 78, magnesium chloride, 11%, sodium sulfate, 5%, magnesium sulfate, 4.7%, calcium sulfate, 3.6%, potassium sulfate, 2.5%, calcium bicarbonate, 0.3%, and the magnesium bromide, 0.2%. So those are the salt minerals present in the oceanic bedrocks, commonly dissolve to the extent develop chemical composition of salinity. My dear student, understanding the chemical composition of salinity is uneven, not the same to all areas. This not the same by being subjected to factors which make variation. And therefore, the factors for salinity variation should be disclosed. We have the following. 1, the nature of oceanic bed rocks. 2, temperature. 3, amount of fresh water discharged into the sea. 4, volcanic activities. 5, organisms. 6, human activities. 7, mixing of oceanic water. Now, my dear students, we should understand on how the factors make significant influence. So to start with the nature of oceanic bedrocks, we have the following explanation. Look here. This is oceanic bedrock. In the oceanic bedrock, salt minerals contained. But the amount of salt minerals contained in oceanic bedrocks not the same to all areas. In some areas, oceanic bedrocks have more salt minerals. While in other areas, oceanic bedrocks have less salty minerals. Thus, if the more salty minerals dissolve the oceanic water in the particular region is made more saline compared to where less salty minerals contained in bedrock. So the variation of salinity, we may say, fundamentally determined by the nature of oceanic bedrock relatively to the amount of salty minerals contained. I hope my students, we are together here. 2, temperature. My dear students, now you are aware that seawater naturally saline because of the dissolved salty minerals contained in bedrocks. But worldwide, temperature not the same. In some geographical regions, especially tropical, temperature high, while in other geographical regions, especially polar, temperature low. Now, where temperature high, oceanic water is made to undergo excessive evaporation. Now, because of excessive evaporation, more salty crystals formed, added into oceanic basin, attributing to high degree of salinity. It is unlike enough in regions where temperature low. So, relative to this factor, understanding, in regions of high temperature, salinity high enough because of excessive evaporation, while in regions of low temperature, salinity slightly low because of less evaporation. For instance, Red Sea has salinity ranging from 36 to 39 per thousand by being located in regions of high temperature. It is unlike if we can compare to Baltic Sea, Caspian Sea. The two have low salinity because of being located in regions of low temperature. 3, amount of fresh water discharged into the sea. Look here, my dear student. The ocean naturally saline because of the dissolved salty minerals. But if into the oceanic basin, fresh water discharged, fresh water can be of rivers, fresh water can be of ice melting, fresh water can be of rainfall, degree of salinity diluted. Therefore, understanding where more fresh water discharged, sea salinity low, as it can be compared to where less fresh water discharged. Here I have given example of Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. The two have a higher degree of salinity because of being located in regions of high temperature. But moreover, you should understand, into these two seas, less fresh water discharged. That's why, relatively to temperature, salinity high enough. For volcanic activities, we used to understand such a geological phenomena involve movement of molten materials from Earth's interior to different parts of the crust, including its surface. Now, the surface of oceanic flow can be supplied with molten materials from the Earth's interior. Such molten materials contain salty minerals. Thus, the occurrence of such geological phenomena add degree of salinity. Research is show sea areas affected by volcanic activities have increased the degree of salinity. Now, we are to look at the factor of organisms. In the ocean, numerous organisms make life. Relatively to the concern, the most pronounced organisms are of coral polyps. Coral polyps, owing to their profound nature, consume calcium carbonate from oceanic bed. Now, calcium carbonate, considered being among of the most pronounced salty minerals attributing to salinity. Thus, by being consumed, it means to some extent the degree of salinity lowered. Another factor here we have of human activities. Certain human activities contribute to the increased degree of salinity, especially the ones which involve the use of agrochemicals. We can draw example for agriculture. Agrochemicals like fertilizers, in time of rain, they are carried into the oceans and thus significantly add the amount of salty minerals to the extent salinity is made to have fair increase. Another factor is of mixing of oceanic water. We have seen in the oceanic basin, water masses move to make a foam commonly known as ocean current. The water of the current may have a high degree of salinity. Also, the water of the current may have low degree of salinity. Now, the currents may move towards each other. Where move towards each other converge and mix. For instance, if this happens, the current is of high salinity, may cause increased salinity to where it flows. If the current is of low salinity, may lower degree of salinity to where it flows. Thus, in some areas, salinity has been lowered or salinity has been increased because of mixing of oceanic water in terms of currents. So, class, the factors we have seen here make uneven chemical composition of oceanic water in terms of salinity. So with that point, we are through with question number 2. Describe the favorable conditions for the development of coral reefs. So we are to give conditions which make the occurrence of coral reefs. But in answering that question, we should have introduction. In the introduction, it is important to define the coral reef. Also, it is important to give the types of coral reefs. My dear students, coral reef, as we can consider their outstanding nature, defined as limestone rock made upon of the skeletons of the tiny marine organisms called the coral polyps. We should have little reflection here. In the ocean, numerous organisms make life, including coral polyps. Now, coral polyps, by nature, are small, softy bodies, organisms. By being small, softy bodies, organisms, easily eaten by other higher organisms. So they use to develop protection against that. They use to develop protection by extracting calcium carbonate, limestone rocks from oceanic body to build protective shells around their bodies. Such protective shells known as corals. Now, as the coral polyps die, corals left steadily accumulate to form a mass of rock known as a reef. Reef means a mass of rock, but the mass of rock is by accumulation of coral reef. Therefore, we used to call it as coral reef. This extremely varied in nature and thus recognized to have the types of fringing reef, atoll, barrier reef, as we regard their distinctive appearance. But the question needs us to give favorable conditions for the occurrence of coral reef. My dear students, I would like you to understand the presence of coral reefs in oceanic environments, not even. Some oceanic areas have coral reefs, while the others have no coral reefs. The ones which have coral reefs subjected to favorable conditions to the life of coral polyps, while those which have no coral reefs subjected to conditions which discourage the life of coral polyps. Therefore, the favorable conditions for coral reefs, we consider the ones which encourage the life of coral polyps and include the following. 1, the sea high temperature condition. Here we say corals grow best in areas with a mean annual sea temperature of about 21 degrees to 29 degrees. Coral polyps cannot tolerate prolonged exposures to cold or sudden temperature change. Coral reefs occur where coral polyps make life. Now, coral polyps make life where temperature high. Therefore, high temperature is one of the conditions for the occurrence, for the development of coral polyps. It means where temperature low, it is rare to find a coral reef, but where temperature high, it is obvious to find a coral reef. 2, presence of plentiful supplies of microscopic life, collectively known as planktons, as marine food. The coral polyps feed on such organisms of planktons. Coral polyps, being organisms, feed on planktons. So where there is an abundant supply of planktons, coral polyps make life. As the coral polyps make life, it is obvious for coral reef to develop. 3, sunlight penetration to the bottom of oceanic floor to enhance the growth of planktons. Knowingly, coral polyps require planktons to grow well. We are clear enough. Coral reefs derived from the life of coral polyps, but coral polyps make life under certain conditions, including of planktons. But planktons used to grow well if there is a sufficient supply of sunlight to the bottom. Condition 4, presence of shallow water of depths of about 30 meter to 60 meter to make penetration of sunlight to reach the surface of oceanic bottom where planktons grow. Hence, corals cannot grow at depths much exceeding 30 to 60 meter because of lack of sunlight. It means by that condition, coral reefs found in the oceanic environment of shallow water, not found in the oceanic environment of deep water. Coral polyps need clear and saline water, and therefore corals cannot grow in areas of river mouths. Saltiness strengthens the bodies of coral polyps. Coral polyps need clear water, water free from sediments, and thus this commonly not found in areas of river mouths because sediments deposited by river water flow. Moreover, saltiness strengthens the bodies of coral polyps. Another condition, coral polyps cannot live long out of water, and therefore corals grow well below the low tide level. Another condition, I have already told you, coral polyps are small organisms. Therefore, the oceanic environment should have absence of strong waves and tides, of which would hinder the accumulations of skeletons to form coral reefs. The organisms being small, it means the corals are also small. They develop coral reefs by accumulation. So if the oceanic environment subjected to strong waves, strong tides, strong currents, such corals easily washed away and cannot make steady accumulation to form coral reef. So class, those are the necessary conditions for the growth of coral reef. So the conditions which we have seen are not even to all oceanic environment. By being not even, that's why distribution of coral reef worldwide not even. By regarding the conditions, coral reefs found in areas of low latitude on the eastern sides of the major land masses where sea temperature high because of warm currents. In similar latitudes are not found on the western sides as the sea temperature lowered by the prevalence of cold currents. I think the question can be much clearer to you. My dear students, I think you have enjoyed the lesson, and I hope with the questions we had, you can now knowledgeable enough with the subtopic of ocean and sea. Now, before we close the class, I would like to leave with you some questions to do. And you will have the solutions for the questions by taking into consideration of the knowledge we have achieved with the guiding questions we had. Therefore, let us end up here for today. We are going to meet in the next lesson. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Let's study, be educated, elimu ni kazi. Elimu ni kazi. Let's study, be educated, elimu ni kazi. Elimu ni kazi. Let's study, be educated.